This is the Audio Fit Test Podcast, where we change the game for beginners to health and fitness. No fads, no gimmicks, just solid advice that will get you results. In this episode, we look at the importance of persistence and sticking to your goal. Here's Jim of jimshealthandmuscle.com, the guy that spectacularly split his trousers in a busy gym while demonstrating squats to a group of ladies. Very professional.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of the Audio Fit Test Podcast, where I try and help the beginner to fitness get off the couch and achieve jaw-dropping fitness results that will last for the rest of their life. Now, so far we've talked a little bit about how to get started with fitness or get into a routine, but before we go on to different parts of health and fitness or diet or the mental aspect of it, I want to share with you one of the most character-defining moments of my life, which I always look back on, and I can certainly say that it's a lesson that I will always remember, and it helps me keep going, and it gives me a self-belief that I never had before this actually happened. And it's actually a story that outlines the value of never giving up at a goal and just sticking with it. Now, back in late 2012, I decided to quit my job as an IT help desk assistant, which was, to be honest, that was a soul-destroying job. And anyone that works in a call center knows how stressful this can be, especially you guys, if there's anyone listening to this that actually does work on an IT help desk. And this is a hard job, and it can be quite stressful, especially if you're like me and you haven't really got the knowledge of IT and you're trying to help people through this, which was tricky. But anyway, I'd worked on the IT help desk for a fair few years. I think it was close to 5 years, and it was a secure job as far as employment goes these days. I got paid an average salary for it, but I knew exactly how much money was coming in each month, so I was quite secure, and there was always possibility for promotion or furthering my skills in that sort of area. So when I told people that I was going to quit this job, give it all up, to follow a dream that I had of creating my own business on the internet, creating a website, learning web design, and creating fitness content, everyone that I knew thought I was crazy. Most people told me that I should keep this job and build my business around it in case it failed, in case I failed. But that's not good enough for me. At this point, I was 30 years old. I loved fitness, and I loved helping people about fitness, helping them change their views on exercise and nutrition and that kind of thing. So I wanted to make this my career rather than something that I absolutely hated doing. Now that sounds completely logical when I look back at it now. Now this type of decision for most people would be horrendously scary, and I totally get that. But it was a little bit easier for me because of my past experience. I've learned some valuable lessons, and these are all through fitness. And I learned that I could use the lessons that I've learned in fitness, and I could apply these to everyday life or just normal life or any other goal. And I knew that I wasn't going to fail with what I was doing, because I've been in situations in my fitness experience where there was no chance that I was going to ever achieve a goal. I was told by many people that I would not achieve that goal. It made me believe that it was impossible. But the more I achieved in fitness, the more I believed that anyone can achieve anything as long as you focus, you have a plan, and most importantly, probably one of the most important things is to never give up. So if I could transform myself from a relatively skinny guy to someone who stood on a stage and lifted a winner's trophy in a bodybuilding show, or if I could go from a guy that couldn't run a mile and a half in 20 minutes to a guy that could comfortably put some trainers on and run a marathon, why could I not succeed at anything else that I put my mind to. So if I hadn't have done all these things before, maybe I'd still be in that IT job right now. But as I said before, I want to share with you one of the character-defining moments that I always call on to identify the importance and the value of never giving up at your goal, because you don't know how close you are to actually achieving that goal and changing your life. When I was in my late teens, early 20s, I was actually training to become a paratrooper in the British Army. Now, to get to this point, there were a whole lot of other hurdles I had to jump, and a lot of challenges that I had to overcome to get to this point. So it didn't just happen. So I wasn't just there, and this was a lesson I learned through luck. But paratraining in the British Army is pretty tough. And one of the standout points about this is that you can quit at any time. So you can choose to quit because it's a voluntary course, but it is extremely physically demanding, and there's a huge element of mental strength involved here as well, which I like to call mental robustness, which I'll talk about a lot as well. So during the pre-para selection process, what the training staff try to do is try and make you quit. They try and break people and get them off the course, because anyone that's willing to do that is not airborne material. So it does make sense that it's hard straight from the get-go. And one of the main qualities of an airborne soldier is that they will never give up. So every morning during this pre-para selection process, all of the new recruits would be ready to go for their first training session of the day at about 8 o'clock in the morning. And I remember when I was doing P Company, it was October, November time in the UK. So it was always cold and wet, the perfect conditions for any outdoor activity. So we'd all be ready to go on our first training session of the day, and this would normally be a run. So it'd either be a run in just trainers, shorts and t-shirts, or we would do it with boots on and webbing and water bottle. Well, in fact, every training session you wore your webbing with your water bottle attached, because that was one of the main things. You're out for quite a while and you'd be moving all the time, and you'd need to take on water at regular intervals. So you always had your belt kit attached with you and your water bottle inside the belt kit. And the first thing they would do is check your water bottle. So everybody had to get their water bottle out and unscrew it. And if this water bottle wasn't full to the top, you'd have to pour it over your head and go and refill it. So I remember this, it happened every morning. There was always at least one person that didn't fill their water bottle up and ended up with it over their head just before they started. And that just makes it a little bit more difficult. So when we started the run, we would all set off with a member of training staff at the front of the squad and a member of training staff at the back. And we'd have one or two either side of us for motivators, if you like. Let's call them motivators. Now, as I said, we ran in a squad. So you'd be in ranks of 3. So you'd have like a big tidy group, if you like, and there was probably about 20 of us to start with. So we'd set off at quite a cheeky pace. It was a fast jog, more like a run, but not a sprint. And we'd run onto the training area. So first of all, you'd run through a few housing estates, you'd run by the side of a road, then you'd run into some woodland, and then you were on the training area in Aldershot. And the training area in Aldershot is not simply like a running area, a nice flat running area. It's got hills, lots of hills, and they were even named. So eventually you knew what was coming when the training staff were talking about the names of the hills we were going to run up. And there was a lot of different terrain to run over as well. There was a valley, quite aptly called Long Valley, and it was a stretch a few miles long, I think, of sand. So that was hard to run on. There was lots of potholes around the area, big divots of earth that had filled up with water, which made great puddles for us to crawl through. So the area was very diverse, which gives good opportunity for different types of training. But the runs that we would go on, in these exercise sessions, they wouldn't simply be just a straightforward run. every now and then we'd get to one of the hills, one of the named hills, and we'd have to do hill reps up there. So they would split the group into two, and they would say, right, Group A, Group B, and Group A goes first. They sprint up the top of the hill, come back down again, and Group B go. And they'd always say, oh, it pays to be a winner. So the guys that were finishing last at the end of the hill reps, they would have to do extra push-ups. So it would force you to actually race. There were also fireman carries. So we'd split up into Group A and Group B, and then you'd partner up and fireman carries up and down the hill, which was, as you can imagine, a lot harder. And also, it pays to be a winner. So the guys that were last were doing push-ups, and not just the guys that were running either. It was the guy he was carrying would be doing the push-ups as well. So these sessions were extremely hard. So we were out there for a good hour and a half, 2 hours on each training session. And this one particular training session that we had, it was the same sketch as every morning. We'd parade at 8 o'clock, getting ready for the run, and we'd have the water bottle check. Inevitably, someone will have forgotten to fill their water bottle up, and it would go over their head. And then after this was all over, we started out on our run. And I remember this one being particularly fast. So the training staff started off at a slightly faster pace than we would normally go at. And looking back, I think this might have been one of the sessions that they were trying to get rid of people. Now, right from the beginning of this training session, one of the guys dropped back from the squad, and it was evident that he was going to struggle with this pace, but they kept it up. And straight away, one of the training staff was right next to him, asking him if he wanted to quit. You know, if he was struggling at this stage of the fitness session, he's not going to make it that much further. But fair play to this guy, he didn't quit. He stuck with it. We kept going around the course. The pace didn't drop. So they kept the faster pace than we used to, and this guy struggled through the whole session. But he stuck with it. He stuck with it through the hill reps. He stuck with it through the fireman's carries. I think on that session we were even crawling through deep muddy puddles on our belt buckles at one point. So it was a nasty, hard session. And all through this, the training staff were on at him, telling him it was no disgrace to quit. He should quit. He was never going to make it, and that maybe he wasn't the type of material that they were looking for. But still, he stuck with it, and he struggled, albeit a little bit further back from the majority of the squad. Because it wasn't just him that struggled, we all struggled, but it really stood out that he was one of the weakest members of the squad. On every one of these sessions as well, we had a Land Rover that drove behind the pack, and it followed us around the training area. And this was known as the Jack Wagon. Because it was such a tough course anyway, you would inevitably get people who got injured or who hadn't looked after themselves properly and they got dehydrated. But the Jack Wagon was also there for people who did want to just give up. They could choose to give up, and if they did, they could just get on the Jack Wagon, and that would be the end of their airborne career. So there was always that option there. They did make it easy for you to quit. But as this exercise session was drawing to a close, we'd all endured the slightly elevated pace and the hill reps and the crawling through puddles and the general beasting that this exercise session offered. But we'd been running on the area and training with Prepara for a few weeks at this point, so we were kind of familiar with where we were going and the geography of the running routes. So we kind of knew when this session was coming to an end. And wherever you are or whatever stage you're at, this does help with morale. It helps with motivation, if you like, and it makes you feel that the end's in sight. So it does give you a boost when you know you're nearly finishing. So when we were coming off the area, the pace hadn't slowed down, but everyone seemed to be keeping tighter as a group. And this guy that was struggling all the way through, he didn't seem to be struggling as much anymore because basically morale had lifted. So we were running back in. We all knew we were going to be back in the barracks soon. So this little last bit was the final push, and it seemed to be going okay. Everyone got tight as a group. We ran off the area. We ran up the normal road towards the barracks, and we could see the barracks. We could see the gate we were going into, and everyone was tight. So yes, we finished. We've made it through another session, and you could feel it. No one said anything because you didn't talk on these sessions. You didn't really want to draw that much attention to yourself, and it's not the done thing, but everyone knew. You could feel that everyone knew we'd finished, and there was a triumphant feeling throughout. As we were running closer to the gate, I remember thinking, I was thinking about the hot shower. I was thinking about getting my wet clothes off and just sitting down on a chair and having a few breaths. And these are the things that you do look forward to. So we're running towards the gate, 200 meters. You can see it, thinking about that food I'm going to eat, because you're hungry after you finish something like this. 100 meters, yes, hot shower. And then just as we were coming up to the gate, we ran straight past it. And you could feel the motivation drain from people. And the P Company staff, they must have done this a few times because they knew what was coming. They knew what people would think. And at that point, as we just left the gate behind us, our finishing point, one of the para staff turns to everyone and he says, "What, you expected it to be over? When you're an airborne soldier, it's never over until your boots are off. And even then, you've got to be ready to go." And at that point, the guy that was struggling all the way around the course gave up. He stopped dead and he was like, "No, this is not for me. I'll see you guys later. Send me back to my unit." So he got himself on the jack wagon. And not only did he stop, I think around 2 other people stopped as well. So they chose to give up at this point. It was their choice to technically change their life. And I must admit, I did feel that I wouldn't be able to carry on, but I did. And I carried on with the rest of the squad for around 400 meters to the back gate, which was our actual finishing point. So for the sake of 400 meters, these guys quit. If they were told that there was only 400 meters left and they had to sprint it, I 100% believe that they would have been able to do that. And I know that if I had have quit at that point and decided that I wasn't going to be an airborne soldier, it would have been one of the biggest regrets of my life. So the major lesson here is that if you've got a goal and you quit at any point, you'll never know how close you came to achieving that goal. So in my experience, it's never worth quitting. It's never worth throwing in a towel. And this goes for any fitness goal, fat loss for instance. I mean, if you are sticking to a diet plan and a training regime for 4 weeks, for instance, and you don't see the results that you expect and decide to quit, maybe it was week 5 where it all came together, or maybe you just needed to tweak something and it would all fall into place. There's a lot to be said about never giving up. And anything that's worth having is never easy to get. So when it comes to those mornings where you have to get out of bed extra early, it's cold outside, it's raining, but you have to get in your cardio session, for instance, it's so easy to just roll over and have an extra half an hour in bed. And it is hard to force yourself out to do that exercise or prep that meal before you go to work, or try and squeeze in an exercise session when you're tired after a hard day at work. But this is the difference between success and failure in a fitness goal. So if you've got a fitness goal or weight loss goal or whatever, and you're struggling enough that it makes you want to quit, just think about how close you could be. I mean, maybe it's something that you just need to tweak, like I've mentioned before. I'm always happy to help where I can. So if you are struggling and you are trying hard and you're not getting where you want to be, give me a shout and I'll see what I can do. But I hope this has given you something to think about, or hope that it has helped in some way. And I'll be back to talk about some more practical advice on how to get your results real soon. So thanks again for sticking around and listening to me ramble on. I always appreciate that you've taken time out of your day to listen to my stuff. But above all, I hope that it helps you out in some way. All the best, Jim.